My name is Meg Bernhard. I am the author of Wine from Bloomsbury's Object Lesson series, and I'm here at Garagiste, the wine bar in downtown Las Vegas, in their backroom cellar. And I'm going to answer a couple questions about wine and the book. I feel like it totally changes depending on the season and what my mood is. Like right now, it's getting a little colder. It's becoming gamay season, which is November, and that's a type of sort of like light red wine from France. Really into gamays. So maybe right now in this particular moment, I am down for a gamay. I don't know that I have a favorite wine region. I think I'm really fascinated by people and places and learning about what the wine of that place can say about the people. So in the book, I talk about a couple places I lived in northern Catalonia and central Spain, and those places feel like home to me. But I've also spent a lot of time in Northern California, Santa Cruz, sort of north of Napa or Sonoma, and I've met some really wonderful winemakers from there. After college, I got like the coolest grant ever to go live on vineyards in Spain and learn about wine, which I knew nothing about, but I wanted to learn Spanish and I really wanted to be in Spain. And so I worked on a couple of small family vineyards that worked in sort of low intervention practices. And it was a really fascinating experience because I was learning Spanish, I was learning Spanish culture, I was learning wine, which I'd never really drunk before. And I had all these observations, not just on drinking wine, but about the systems of power that were bound up in making and consuming wine, from labor to class and economic status and accessibility to climate change and gender. And I hadn't really read a book that addressed some of those systems of power. So after I spent that year living on vineyards in Spain, I started reporting on wine in California and in Spain. And that's sort of how the book came about. I think wine culture is definitely not homogenous. I think people often have the idea that wine is sort of a stuffy, inaccessible luxury good, which in many ways it is. There are wines that sell for $500,000. You will not see me be drinking those wines. But there are other types of wine that I think philosophically are made by people who are interested in expanding the notion of like, who can drink wine? What sort of stories can wine tell about a place and people? And if anyone is interested at all in how agriculture becomes social commodity, these sorts of wines can teach us a lot. So that's probably the biggest misconception, is that wine is not for everyone. Because I think wine, for anyone who wants to drink it or even just learn about it, if they don't drink it, I think it can be for everyone. It's interesting, when I finished my fellowship year, I had to present to some faculty members about what my experience was like on the vineyards. And as I was talking, this one professor said something like, oh, the experience of winemaking seems sort of akin to writing, in that with winemaking, it's a seasonal product. You harvest it once a year and you spend the rest of the year cultivating the vine and getting it ready for the harvest. And in harvest, you have this one decision, which is, when do you cut the grapes? And that's, in some ways, the most important decision you can make in the year. And after that, it's irreversible. The grape has accumulated however much sugar content and acidity, you can't go back. And in some ways, that feels sort of like writing and publishing, at least. Like, there's a certain point, I feel like writing is never done, but at a certain point, I have to stop, because otherwise I'll go crazy. Like, I have to stop, I have to get it out in the world, and maybe I'll endlessly be revising in my head afterwards, but at a certain point, it's no longer mine, it's for the world. So I think wine sort of teaches you that about writing. Like, you have to sort of let go and release it and let it be of the world in its it's not really yours anymore. It's for the reader or for the drinker to respond to. There's this wine writer I really like. His name's Miguel de Leon. He's written for Punch magazine. He's the lead sommelier at Pinch Chinese in New York. I can't remember which borough, but he's great. If you follow him on Instagram, he'll have these wine descriptors that are like, this wine tastes like, you know, a one-night stand on New Year's Eve. And I think he's trying to emote something there. And people have their criticisms of wine language no matter what. I think like wine language is so personal and subjective, and it's hard to find any universal descriptor. So I tend to really like the very quirky, personal, memorable ones. I've had some great wine descriptors from people in Vegas that I know that you will see in the book that sort of harken back to their experiences of childhood. And that feels like a moment of connection. Like we can talk about what we taste in the wine and what that means about our memories. I don't know much about the strip wine culture. I know there's a lot of fine dining and a lot of fine wine associated with the strip, but I come from a world of like really sort of muddy, like gross, delightful, but like small production, sort of gnarly wines, like natural wines, which you can find in Las Vegas for sure. Like Garagiste is sort of the pioneer of low intervention and small producer wines in Vegas. But you can also find a lot downtown, like at Yukon Pizza, there's some good natural wines. One place I really like to go for happy hour is the Virgin Hotel and Casino for their Thai night market. They have really good natural wines. And it seems like there's more and more wine shops popping up around. So it seems increasingly, especially downtown in the Arts District, there is an emerging wine culture here. Tarragona maybe has my favorite restaurant in the world. Like, it's this little restaurant run by these two guys who are really into wine, but they're these like two twins who are like short and bald. And every time I see them, I think of them as Tweedledee and Tweedledum, which is not great, but they're awesome.